Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by my co-host, Katie Harris, founding partner here at Spot On Solutions. Katie, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
This is a fun one.
Super excited for this podcast. This is a special episode for us here at Success Elevated because it is episode 100. How crazy is that?
So crazy. Welcome to episode 100, Hayden. Did you think you would hit episode 100?
No, I did not.
I know. You really didn't think we would. Like, that's the truth. You didn't.
I just didn't. I wasn't sure what this whole thing would turn into. And it's been awesome. It's been so fun, and we're gonna take a few minutes today. This is not gonna be a super long episode, but we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what it's been like for us over the last 100 episodes, maybe some of our favorite moments, things we enjoyed, things that we learned along the way, and answer a very common question that we get, which is, has it been worth it for you guys? Should we start we get asked by clients and affiliates in the industry, like, should we start a podcast? And 100 episodes ago, there weren't as many podcasts as there are now. It feels like there's a bunch of other people starting podcasts, which is super, super cool. So we're going to talk about all that.
In the home industry space, there's a lot of podcasts out there that have become really great resource for the industry.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see all of us kind of grow and learn along the way. And
and a lot of us are good friends with each other and support each other in the space.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Like I think of Michelle Blevins at CNR, like she might have started right before us. She started about the same time kind of doing a podcast, and it's been fun to see all of the guests that she's had on. She's had you on multiple times. We've had her on a bunch. Like it's kind of been fun to grow alongside her and see all the cool things they're doing at CNR. And obviously they're a great affiliate of ours, but there's a lot of people out there that are using a platform like this.
Floodlight Consulting is another one.
Floodlight
has a great podcast out there that people really lean into for some great resources.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that I feel like I've learned, but I want to pick your brain first and foremost. What's been some of your biggest takeaways from the last? We're coming up on 2 years. We're not quite 2 years yet, but the last 100 episodes.
Okay, number one. And this is something that's been top of mind for me this year. It's like our word of the year here at Spot On Solutions and Get Found First. Our company's here is grit, right? We just did a big launch for 2024 on grit and just being able to really do hard things. And there's been weeks when it's like, we're doing a podcast, right? And I think I've learned that about you this year, this determination to just, you haven't missed a week, 100 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's pretty cool. And I think that something I've learned is when you do something consistently, week after week after week after week, like there's a momentum that happens and things compound, and it's pretty cool.
That's been definitely the word of the day, the word of the month for us, because we're still in January technically, and it's going to be a theme, obviously, like throughout the rest of this year. But for me, like grit is like I've learned comes in different forms. Like there are times I'm not the most like positive or like maybe a little bit more pessimistic, or I like to consider myself like a realist. So there are times where I'm like, I just don't think that's going to work, but I still go out and try and do it. And I think that's like grit can come in different forms. Katie, I don't think I've ever heard you say anything negative in your life. Like you're just not, like that's just not how you're built. And I think we can kind of, it's been fun kind of having, we have similar personalities, but we also have some differences, but we can arrive at the same goals and accomplish the same things by having grit in different ways, if that makes sense. I don't know, because there's like I'm a realist, and I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work, and I voice that concern, but then I still go do it, and I sometimes it works out great, and
I'm like, why wouldn't this work?
Yeah.
We can make this work. Let's go make this work.
Right. Yeah. And then we get to the end of it, and we're like, a lot of this worked, or maybe so maybe some pieces didn't, right? Whatever. And I think that's the cool thing about grit or motivation or determination is it doesn't matter how you get to the end as long as you're still working to get to the end. Like you can be frustrated, you can be mad. I had a teacher tell me a story when I was younger, and we were talking about some examples it was a church teacher. It was a Sunday school teacher, but he talked about 2 lessons. I used to work on a farm moving irrigation pipe. And
did all of your best lessons in life come on in
a lot of my best
irrigation
lessons.
pipe?
Yes. It's extremely hard and frustrating work. And so you learn how to deal with a lot of that. But he taught me at a young age, he taught me, he's like, okay, what if you had to move a bunch of pipe in the morning and you asked 2 friends to come help you? One of them said, oh, I love moving pipe. I will be there no matter what. Moving pipe is my favorite thing to do in the world. It's my favorite pastime. I will be there. The other friend said, I hate moving pipe. I can't believe you would ask me to do this. It sucks. Moving pipe is an awful job. And the person that said it sucks showed up to help you, complained the whole time, but showed up to help you. And the other person just never showed up, even though it's their favorite thing in the world to do. He's like, which friend would you be happier with at the end of the day?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I'd probably be happier with the friend that
showed
up, even if they complained the entire time, even if they were frustrated and hate moving pipe. They cared enough about me to show up and help me.
Yeah.
And I think it's similar to maybe the podcast and things that we've done over the last, just more so than anything else, like show up. Yeah. I don't care if you're frustrated with the work, if you're frustrated with the task, like we all are at times. Some people show up more than others, but as long as you show up, do the work, get it done, have that motivation and determination to complete the task, you can be frustrated and you can complain, because I'm going to be frustrated and probably complain too. But as long as the task is getting accomplished, that's the goal at the end of the day. Yeah. So
we're going to have to come back and do a lot more podcasts this year on grit.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be, I think we're going to have a lot more podcasts this year on grit. So what has been kind of your big takeaway this year through 100 podcasts?
Man, my favorite thing about the podcast has always been the stories. We've interviewed so many different people from different walks of life. That's kind of been my favorite piece about this, is like I get a front row seat to success. It's kind of what we said from the beginning. We've said it from the beginning. We've said it a lot. We have some of the coolest clients and affiliates and friends in both the restoration industry and in others. Mm-hmm. And I love hearing people's stories. I could sit and listen to, like, one of our clients, Reed's Dairy. I could sit and listen to stories about them starting their business and the challenges that they faced. And, it's been a family business for nearly 100 years. And like all of these things are so, so cool. Like I could sit and listen to stories like that all the time. We had, Alex Duda on last week, who used to be an affiliate of ours, talking about Albiware. I could sit and listen to Alex tell stories and talk about, he didn't really mention this, but a theme of his is grit. Like, he's had to work super hard to get where he's at today. I could sit and listen to people tell stories all the time. Yeah. And that's been my favorite part, I think, is just there are so many lessons and stories out there that aren't being told. And this podcast, in some small way, can share more of those stories, which I love. I think that's such a cool piece to having a podcast, is being having clients or having affiliates that you work with on a daily basis. You don't necessarily get to hear those stories. You're talking about marketing or building their website or helping them grow their business. And that's cool for sure. But being able to sit down with them and learn about their background and their family and the challenges that, made them who they are, I think that's like the coolest piece about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a post on LinkedIn a while ago, and I said something like I get asked all the time, like, is it worth it to do a podcast? And it got a ton of response. I got so many direct messages from people saying, really, is it worth it to do a podcast? Should I do a podcast? What do you think? Is it worth it to do a podcast?
Yes. Yes, I think so. Yeah. I think it is big time, especially if you have a unique story to tell, or you feel like you have, like, I don't feel like my story is very unique, but I feel like I have people around me that have unique stories, and maybe I've been blessed with the gift of talking. Like I can
you're
talk.
A great facilitator. Like this is what I get all the time. I go to trade shows or events, and people come up to me all the time and are like, Hayden is so good at asking questions. Hayden is so good at making me feel comfortable. Like, that's a gift that you have.
Well, thank you. And I think a lot of that comes from, like, how I was raised. Like, my parents have always, like, encouraged me to ask questions, especially as a younger kid. And I'm sure, Katie, you have kids as well that have done this, that, like, just ask, like, little kids just ask lots of questions. And I never once in my life was discouraged by my parents from asking questions. And I think that has just always made me naturally like inquisitive. And that's what makes this podcast so cool is I just get to sit back and just ask sometimes dumb questions, be like, what does that mean? Or what, but I just get to learn really cool stuff. And so, yeah, is it worth it? For me, it's been worth it. I feel like there's been a lot of value. Like our audience has gotten a lot of value from our podcast. But if nothing else, selfishly, it's been awesome for me. Like I have learned a lot about myself and about these awesome guests that we've had on. And yeah, I think it's totally worth it if you feel like you have a story to tell personally, or if you feel like there are people around you that have cool stories to tell and that you can share some of that value with your customers or an audience that you might have. I think it's totally worth it. What do you think?
I think that's a great way to say it. Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're asking yourself that question, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the answer. If you're in a situation where you have access to people and you can, bring them into a platform or an audience and present that in a way that changes people's lives or changes their day, like do it. Right.
Yeah.
And if you can do it in a way that enhances your life, do it. And sometimes it enhances your business. And quite frankly, it's helped our business. I don't know that was the big goal for us. I think that, we were like, I don't know that it was ever really the goal that, hey, this is going to benefit Spot On Solutions from a business perspective, really.
Right.
I know that we wanted to give back to the industry. We knew we had a lot of really good stories we wanted to go out and tell, but it is a benefit for businesses to be out there in the space and be able to bring value in that way for sure.
Well, and yeah, I think at the end of the day, like if you feel like you can offer some kind of benefit or knowledge, or again, maybe you feel like I do and don't necessarily feel like maybe you have the knowledge to offer, but you can maybe facilitate other people sharing their knowledge. That's a great reason to start a podcast.
Yeah. So there's a couple purposes, I guess. Yeah. When people ask me about podcasts, I'm like, well, what is your why? Why do you want to do it? Because at the end of the day, it's hard work, right? If your goal is to make money, like you were saying, you might need to reconsider what your why is. You might need to reconsider your why. Yeah. Right. But if your why is like personal fulfillment and you like telling people stories or hearing people's stories or bringing value, I think it's super fulfilling. Yeah. If your why is to grow your business and authority in a space, I think there's definitely opportunity to do that. There's some real logistics to getting started. So let's go into the boring stuff for just a minute, right? Yeah. What did you learn right out of the gate when we were first getting started? What are some of the first things somebody has to do? Let's rewind time. Let's go back to episode 1. Yeah. And the clunkiness of figuring things out to get started with a podcast.
I think it's worth the investment to get some good equipment right off the rip. Yeah. I think we got a couple of mics that kind of worked right off the bat. Yeah. And I think we regretted it almost, a month or two in. We were like, we've got to get new equipment.
So get good equipment. Number one.
Get some good equipment. It's if you don't have somebody that can edit, you got to find somebody.
Don't waste your time doing it yourself. Find somebody, a freelancer or whatever.
The first 10 or so episodes I edited myself, and the editing process wasn't complex, but it's just time consuming for me. I've got a lot on my plate with us here at Spot On Solutions and managing team members and clients and all this stuff. And it was just taking a lot of my time. It was taking several hours a week.
And it took all the joy out of it for you. You love the people and the stories. You did not love the technical and the editing. So tip number 2, get rid of the part of it you don't love and let somebody else do that.
Yeah, we found a great tool on the internet called Fiverr, which it's not a new tool. It's been out on the internet for a long time, but we found an editor through Fiverr who's actually local to us here in Blackfoot, which is even better. So we can talk to him, but his platform is through Fiverr. Yeah. And he edits our podcast for us weekly. Dennis
does it in 24 hours.
Yeah, has it ready for us in 24 hours. We pay him a small fee every week so that he can take care of that, and he does a great job for us. And it's worth it for us to outsource it so that we don't have to stress about, can we get this edited? Can we get it taken care of? Dennis can do it fast enough that it works for him. He gets to make some money on it. and it works for us because we don't have to wait
So
about it.
do the part you love, outsource the part you don't.
Yep.
Love it.
Those are a couple of lessons. I think one of the biggest challenges that we still have today, and I think it's still tough, is coordinating schedules, like getting podcasts outlined. It's just hard sometimes to get people lined up, especially if you're trying to do this weekly like we are.
And get great people.
Yeah. So that's a lesson that I think moving forward that we're going to, I think, try to even get a little bit better at. There's some great tools out there on the internet like Calendly and stuff like that can help you coordinate on schedules. But that's just going to be a challenge that you're just going to have to continually face every single week.
Well, I think it's because you always want to make it easy for the people coming on, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Make it valuable for them.
Yeah. And you don't want to interfere with people's schedules too much. I think that was kind of, again, another lesson that we learned is that the podcast doesn't have to be very long.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people stress about making this so long. They see podcasts.
As you say that, I look at my clock, my watch.
Right. But like there are people out there on the internet that think they've got to have a 2-hour, 3-hour long podcast, and you don't. Like we've learned, especially with the stories that we're telling and the the tips and tricks that we're talking about marketing, or we're talking about growing a business. You don't need to spend an hour or 2 hours. Yeah. You can do and have great conversations in 20, 30, 40 minutes. Like you don't necessarily need to take all that time. And so again, that makes it easier to get guests because we can be like, hey, we'll have you in and out in an hour. Like you do not have to sit here on a Zoom call for 3 hours while we're recording and chatting and we've got to come up with topics for that long. Yeah, it's great.
The Success Elevated podcast is brought to you by SOS Navigator. SOS Navigator is an on-demand training platform geared towards marketing, personal development, and business growth. We understand that as a business owner in the service industry, you wear a million hats. Let SOS Navigator be a simple and cost-effective way for you to continue to grow your business. Click the link in the show notes below and use code SOS Podcast to get 10% off your next on-demand training course.
What about anything, we'll save that question for the end. I was going to ask you what would you do differently over the last, 18 months to 2 years, but has there been a favorite moment for you? Favorite guest, favorite story, favorite, just favorite moment?
Boy, there's been a lot.
There's been some good ones.
We've had really, truly some of my favorite people. Some of my favorite people have come on this podcast, and some of them I've got to be on here with, and some of them I haven't. Some of them you've interviewed on your own, and I've watched those and been really inspired by things I didn't know about them. Really, probably one of my favorites, and boy, that's hard. One of my favorites goes clear back to the very beginning, and he's only been on once, and you should get him on again. But it's one of the most viewed ones, actually. And that's my business partner. That's Michael Johnson. So Michael came on, and he doesn't talk about our journey very often publicly, but I thought he was inspiring when he talked about it, and really like his passion for helping people reach their potential, I thought was inspiring. So that was good.
I love that episode. It's just naturally who Michael is. Like he's a big picture motivation guy. And
I mean, obviously one of my favorite people in the whole world anyway, right? Been my business partner for 12 years and one of my favorite people anyway, but I love that conversation you had with him, and we should just repost that episode anyway, because it was like episode 4. I don't know. It was like it was a long time ago, but that one I've watched over and over and over because I'm like, that's my why.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah. I don't know if pinning it down to one particular moment is tough for me because we've had so many great ones.
Is it more like a theme for you?
Yeah, there's been so many themes. I think that a big theme, overarching theme for me has been just like people. Like everybody that has successfully grown a business and has come on and told their story on our podcast has talked about people in some way, shape, or form, whether it's helping elevate, and our vision here at Spot On Solutions is to elevate people and businesses. And we've had people on that have lived that vision, even though they don't work here, right? So people talking about elevating their employees, helping train and make their employees better, helping grow relationships with maybe referral parties or just other people out in the industry. And it goes back to, there's again so many people that talked about this, but Len and Annette.
You've talked about that episode so many times.
So many times. Again, one of our first episodes, I think it was within the first 20 or 30 episodes. I can't remember exactly. But Len Hume and Annette Marchanda, they came on and talked, and Len said this very powerful thing to me that I think is so evident with so many of our successful stories, that people are, if you're successful in business, you've done this without necessarily realizing it. But he talked about, if you want to build relationships with people, you have to go into that relationship not expecting to get anything out of it. If you go into a relationship thinking, how can this person make me more money? How can this person grow my business? You're not going to build that relationship in probably a very positive way. If you go into that relationship though thinking, how can I help this person? How can I love this person? How can I take care of this person? That relationship is just naturally going to build and become better. And that's how you build true, like, long-lasting relationships with people, which I think is just the coolest way to look at it.
You know, the thing that's cool about that is that changed you.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the power of a podcast.
Yeah.
Is you heard that, you had that conversation, and that changed you.
Yeah, big time.
I've heard you say that so many times, but more than that, I've seen you live that since then. And so that's the cool thing about being a part of a podcast. That's why people listen to podcasts, right? Is because you hear little things.
Cool pieces like that.
You hear little things and they change you. Yeah. And so that's cool.
Yeah. And it's like, there's been tons of stories since then that I feel like have re-emphasized that point without them. I mean, I think of like Dr. Hearn came on when Derek was still helping out with the podcast a little bit, and me and Derek got to interview Dr. Hearn, Dr. Nathaniel Hearn, and he talked about growing up and how he had like several people help him, like they were teachers or coaches when he was a young kid, and like completely changed his life. And again, those teachers or coaches went into that relationship not thinking, man, this kid is going to...
What's in it for me?
Yeah, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
This kid's eventually going to become a great educator or a great, NFL football player or something. They were just like, no, I just want to help this kid because I care about this kid. And again, living the principle that, Len was talking about in his podcast without even really knowing it. And so there's multiple times over that, and it's just been reemphasized to me multiple times. If I want to better myself, grow Spot On Solutions or grow any future businesses or whatever that I might be a part of, I've got to want to live this kind of way, and I've got to want to build relationships this way. Which is
100 podcasts, 1,000 stories and memories.
So cool.
So cool.
So let's close things out. We haven't done this in a while, but let's close things out answering the same questions that all of our guests have been answering recently. So let's start with favorite book or podcast that you're reading or listening to recently.
Okay, I'm going to do a book, but first of all, my son, like my 21-year-old son, has just recently gotten way into podcasts. And so he's like sending me podcasts all the time that he loves. It's so cool. Like, I think it's really fun. He's like, hey, you listen to this podcast? You listen to this podcast? Really fun. But my favorite book, it's been my favorite book for a while now, and I just keep reading it and rereading it and rereading it, and I love it more than anything, is by the Arbinger Institute. And it's
the same book I was going to mention.
Is it really?
Yep.
Oh, you're going to have to go something else now unless we're going to have the same one.
You're good.
But Leadership and Self-Deception.
Yep.
Man, that's
so good.
That book has been super impactful for me. It's an old book, but I just recently came across it, and that book's a game changer for me. So that's a good one.
The other book that I've read recently, because it's actually the first time I've ever read it, even though I've talked about some of the principles from it on the podcast, Atomic Habits.
Oh, it's my favorite.
So good. Like, its core principle is a principle that I've, thought about even before I read the book. Cause I think we talked about it. But even you were like, are you sure that's not from Atomic Habits? Cause it's the same thing, but getting 1% better every single day. Like, just trying to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. Is going to help you grow as a person. Compounds. Yeah, and it compounds over time. So
this part right here is actually one of my favorite parts of the podcast.
Yeah.
Because, this has been cool. I don't know at what point it happened when we were doing this podcast, Hayden. Maybe, I don't know, episode 50, episode 60. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at some point, I remember texting you from a trade show. And I'm like, something's different. Because all of a sudden, I was at a trade. I think it was at the core, at the collective.
Yeah.
And I just had a lot of people coming up to me and they were like, I really like this podcast. I really love this book that got recommended. And I was like, dude.
Really?
Like, people are listening to the podcast. I'm like, I don't know when that happened. So if you're thinking about doing a podcast, at some point, I don't know what episode it happens, but people start to say things. And I thought what was interesting is people came up and they were saying, hey, you recommended this book, or I heard this book and it was recommended. This is one of the most common things people come up and say to me is
I checked out that book.
So-and-so recommended this book and I really liked it. So this is cool. All of our podcast guests, when you come on and recommend books, this is
People
one of the
listening.
most common things that people come back and say they go back and check out.
People actually, are paying attention, which is really cool.
Smart people.
Yep.
Really cool.
Second question. What do you do to relax at the end of a long day? What do you do to recharge the batteries, Katie?
Yeah.
Play pickleball?
So you know what I do. The first time I answered this, I was like, my favorite thing that I always did was I just like went home and hung out with my kids and cheered for my kids. Well, I think when I answered it before, I'm like, my kids are like grown up now and I'm kind of an empty nester. I don't know what I do, right? And now that thing is pickleball. Like me and my husband and my brother and his wife, like we really like to go play pickleball. So it's
Love it.
Kind of my thing.
I'm big on, and I think, again, going back to one of our podcasts, I think this was Justin Sifford called it this. I might be crediting him with something that it wasn't him, but
Justin's smart. You should credit him with lots of stuff.
We like Justin, but I think he said it's important to have white space.
Oh yeah, that is smart.
And shut your mind off and do something. So like maybe it's pickleball or whatever. Like
there is no white space in pickleball.
Well, no.
Have you never played pickleball?
No. Listen to me. Your white space is not necessarily like you're not doing anything. It means you're shutting your brain off to all other things. When you're playing pickleball, the only thing you can focus on, especially with how you play, is focusing on pickleball because you want to win.
Well, there's a lot of trash talking.
That's what I'm saying. Hey, that's fine, but it's all within pickleball. You're
that's
not
true.
You're not thinking about work
or
the stresses of clients or whatever. And you're not thinking about employees. You're thinking about, I've got to beat my husband in pickleball.
That's true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I try to do something similar to that after work every day. And it might be something just like turning on and watching a football game, or like I go for a walk with my dog, but I really try and actively have some kind of white space at the end of every day. So like do something that requires me to solely focus on that, because then it allows me to shut the brain off and not worry about work and not stress about work and all those things. And I can just really focus on whatever that thing is.
There's a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Super good book. I hated it the first time I read it. Matter of fact, I couldn't even read it the first time I read it. And one of the things it says in it is protect the asset. Above all things, protect the asset. And the asset is your brain, right? You got to give it some space and some room to have some downtime, to be creative, to reboot a little bit. So protect the asset. Give it a little bit of space.
And it's hard for entrepreneurs to do big time. It's hard to do that. But I think if you a lot of people call it practicing mindfulness. I think that's kind of the same thing as having white space in your life. Yeah. Even if all you can stomach is 5 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour every day, but take the time to just go do something, go freaking watch a mind-numbing Netflix documentary. Just go do something that just shuts your brain off for a little bit, recharge, and then you can get back to work. So
cool. I like it.
Last question. And this, we've kind of talked about it in kind of tangential ways over the last few minutes, but if you could rewind to the beginning we won't do the beginning of your career. We'll do the beginning of the podcast. If you could rewind to the beginning of the podcast and tell your younger self, tell younger Katie.
100 episodes ago, Katie.
100 episodes ago, Katie.
Okay.
One thing, what would that one thing be?
Have fun.
Yeah.
I think. Have fun with it. I think maybe it's better to rephrase it. Is there anything you would do different about the last 100 episodes? Is there something you would try differently, or? Well, okay. Maybe I would help you a little bit more. Is that fair? Okay, in retrospect.
That's a cop-out answer.
If I had to do it again, I would help you a little bit more, because we really did. We were like, Hayden, we want a podcast.
But you figured out.
And like you to go figure it out. And I was like, you were like, how do I do that? And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm like, Super Tech can do it. Like, call Larry and Eric. They'll help you. I think that's literally the advice I gave you. And I was like, tell me what you need. I think that was my advice I gave you. And I think I did get a little bit better at it down the road. I think I've been better at helping you like get guests, and I'll jump on with you. But if I could rewind to the beginning, I would be a little more.
Those first few episodes.
I'd be a little more helpful to you, my friend.
No. I think that was good at the beginning. I think we needed to learn. We needed to kind of sink or swim a little bit to be like, can this thing function? And we did. We learned that it could function. It needed some help to maybe function better, which is, we got the editor and we got some better equipment, and that kind of helped solve. Yeah. We got a good system. Sierra, has been a huge help.
She's awesome.
She's obviously taken care of a lot of the social posting and pulling clips and coordinating with guests. She's taken care of a lot of that stuff. And so
it's a team.
It's been a team effort, and I think that's really solved it.
What would you do different?
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself?
I think, for me, I think similar to what we started with the podcast, I wasn't sure if this was, I wasn't sure if 100 episodes was possible. And so
you weren't sure if every week was possible.
If every week was possible, totally.
Yeah.
And I would go back and tell, 100 episodes ago, Hayden, they're like, this, you can do this. This is something that is possible. And obviously I've learned that along the way because we've done it. We've done an episode every week for 100 weeks.
Yeah.
But I think I would go back and tell younger Hayden, I would tell episode 1 Hayden, you guys can do this. You can do a weekly episode. You can get weekly guests. It's going to be hard, and there's going to be weeks that you're going to be scrambling.
But it's going to be good.
But it's going to be good, and there's going to be value, and people are going to like listening to this. And I think I would help maybe motivate episode 1 Hayden a little bit more to be like, this is going to be fine. You're going to be able to find guests. You're going to figure this out. It's all going to work out. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, guess what?
What?
I got something for you.
Okay, what's up?
I have got a 100 present for you.
No, you don't.
I do. I got two 100 presents for you, actually.
100 presents.
I do. The first 100 present is going to come throughout the day from our team.
Okay.
And you are going to have 100 compliments coming to you. You're going to have 100.
That's going to be awkward. Okay.
Because, your love language is a little bit words of affirmation.
Oh, geez. That's going to be fun to deal
words
with today.
Words of affirmation coming to Hayden throughout the day.
I'm going to lock the door of my office. No.
Via Slack.
Okay.
Via Slack.
Gosh dang it. Okay.
100 compliments coming to Hayden.
Appreciate that.
Things we love about Hayden and the podcast. So.
Thank you.
Enjoy that. 100 compliments coming to Hayden throughout the day from the Spot On Solutions and Get Found First team.
That's very nice of you.
Enjoy that. Enjoy that. Also, you have $100 gift certificate to Jakers.
Woo!
For you and Allie to go out to dinner and celebrate 100 episodes.
That's very nice of you.
Thank you so much for being the host of Success Elevated. We think you are pretty amazing.
Well, this is, like I said, this has been my favorite part of my week. I thoroughly enjoy this. I get to meet and talk with some cool people. So thank you.
So
it's
cool.
been great.
All right, everybody that's listening, if you're thinking about doing a podcast, we're going to say, be brave.
Yeah, be brave. Go do it.
Be brave. Get out there and do it. Share your excellence with the world. And if we can help you with it, give us a shout out. We'd love to point you in the right direction.
Yep. Reach out to us. We've got a lot of cool resources that we've learned over the last 100 episodes.
You got it. Thanks, Hayden.
Thanks, Katie.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.